everyone, and welcome to another English with Joseph. Well, today I want to talk to you about one of my favorite subjects. One of my favorite subjects in teaching English grammar is the perfect tenses. I love the perfect tenses. It's something which everyone should know about. Let me explain. The perfect tenses are often overlooked in English. We have many immigrants who come from Eastern Europe, Russia, and other countries where the present perfect doesn't exist. There's often a lot of confusion why we have the present perfect. Why do they exist, these perfect tenses? And if you really are struggling with that question, then simply contact me and I'll send you my booklet, which is called The Perfect Tenses. But today I want to talk to you about them so that you have a clearer understanding of what they are. So, let's begin with how we make the present perfect. Well, have been, have done, have worked is perhaps the most common one. This is the present perfect. Why do we have it though? Why does it exist? Because usually in English you can just say I did that or I finished that. The present perfect exists to talk about things which don't have a clear start date and end date. Now what I mean by that is things where perhaps you've chosen not to talk about them within the context of time, or perhaps you're talking about the bigger things in life, like love or joy or happiness, things which don't have start dates and end dates. You can't really say, I loved my husband yesterday, but I don't love him today. Maybe in the small sense of the idea you can, but you can't say it in the bigger sense, because love and happiness and joy in a philosophical sense are things which flow through all of us. Because they flow through all of us, they're not things which will end. So, the perfect tenses exist to talk about things which, for whatever reason, don't have a clear start and end date. Maybe because you don't want them to. Maybe you want to talk about the action of something. For example, I was at the hospital is simply a statement about where you were yesterday. Maybe if it was yesterday, I was at the hospital yesterday, but I've been at the hospital. Talking outside of time gives a clear meaning to the action. Let me talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so the best way to think of the past tense is like a big library. And that library, everything which is in it is in the order of date. So you can go to the 31st of July 1976 and you can find an action which is started and when it ended. Okay, so that is the past tense. There's no feeling or emotion in it. But imagine you want to talk about something with an action. Okay, about a feeling or a sentiment. Imagine your boss asked you yesterday, where were you? I was at the hospital. Okay, so that belongs in the domain of the past tense. But what if your wife asked you, where were you yesterday? You could say, I've been at the hospital, because your wife doesn't really care when you were there, but the moment you say it, she's going to be more concerned about why you were there. Okay, so by removing time and talking about the action, you're giving it more importance. Okay, so for example, if you're talking to your girlfriend or your boyfriend and you say, yeah, I can see you tomorrow night at 6 o'clock at an exact time, it doesn't really sound very romantic. What's more romantic is to say, yes, of course, I'd like to see you tomorrow night. You're speaking outside of time, because it doesn't really matter what time you meet the person as long as you meet them. And it works the same in the past. Okay, you can talk about things that you want to do. You can talk about things that you'd like to do in the future, but things that you've done, you can talk about them in the context of at 3 o'clock last week I did this, or you can say, yeah, I've been doing this, or I've done that, outside of time. Let me give you an example. Imagine that you and I work together in an office, and imagine there's another person there called John, and imagine that I don't like John. So you tell me, Joseph, you really need to talk to John because it's not nice that they argue. It's not nice, it's been an argument, you should talk to him. So the next day, I could come to work and I could say, oh, by the way, I spoke to John. But to say I spoke to John is really only telling you what I did on a certain day. Spoke to John, washed the dishes, cleaned the house. There's no feeling there. But if I tell you, oh, by the way, I have spoken to John, okay, because you really don't care when I spoke to him, you just want to know I've spoken to him, then you'll be happy, okay? So the idea is that you use the present perfect when you're talking about relationships, when you're talking about actions, and you use the past tense purely when you're talking without feeling about time. I hope that makes it a little bit clearer. I know it can be very complex. So let's just summarize what we've spoken about. The present perfect can be used when you're talking about something outside of time. It's usually used when you are either talking about something which is started and not finished, when you're talking about an event in the past and you really don't know when it happened, or you're talking about it in a philosophical way. And also for those things which academics and spiritual people and philosophers use to talk about the things that flow through all of us, love and happiness, because these things don't ever have start dates or end dates. They're considered to be infinite. Alright? So, the present tense is used to describe things outside of the context of time to make the action seem more important. The reason why you need to understand this is because if you take someone from Poland or someone from Russia and put them with a native speaker, that native speaker, to try to get along with them, is likely to say, how have you been? So that's a continuous question. How have you been? And it needs an answer like, I have been fine. The same with, what have you been doing? Needs an answer, yeah, I've been doing fine. But if you answer that question with, I did this, I finished that, I completed this, it sounds a bit strange and also a bit arrogant, because the question is not about what you've done in the past. The question really is about what you're doing or how life is going for you. So, the present perfect tense is used to talk about things outside of time, because you choose to talk about them outside of time, because they can't be spoken of in the framework of time, or simply because they haven't finished yet. I hope that makes it a little bit clearer. I know my book definitely will make it clear. The present perfect isn't really a tense you hear in business very much, because that's all about dates and times and finishing jobs. But when you're talking about your dreams and aspirations of the past and regrets, that's almost certainly where you will hear the present perfect, because it's an emotion. Next time you're listening to an English love song, have a listen to the lyrics. You might be surprised. You might just find the present perfect there. Thank you. Goodbye.